This program is brought to you by Emory University.
Watch. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar. My name is Tanya Willard. I'm the Director of Orientation for Emory College of Arts and Sciences, and I want to welcome all of you here tonight. I especially want to say hello to our students that are joining us from across the world. We know that some of you may be up very early or staying up very late to join us tonight, so we really appreciate you taking the time to join us for the webinar. I also want to say hello to our parents and families that are joining us tonight. We're really happy that you're here too, and we're happy that you're participating. Before we get started, I want to go over some of the ground rules for what we'll be covering tonight. The first thing is that we will be taking about 30 minutes tonight, give or take, and we will be going through a presentation and we'll leave some time afterwards for you to ask questions. Jason, who's also here with me, will be able to take questions live. And you'll also notice, and you have already noticed, I see, that there is a chat box at the bottom left corner of your screen. And we encourage you to use that chat box, but we want you to use it to ask questions that pertain directly to this webinar. We have some of the orientation captains, the orientation interns, and some academic advisors on hand tonight to answer some of your questions. So we just ask that you keep your questions to the topic of what we're talking tonight. And also, please remember that you are going to be interacting tonight in the chat box with students who you may be living with or attending classes with. So I hope that you'll be respectful towards each other. Okay? I believe that is all I have for now. So I am actually going to turn it over to our presenter tonight. We're going to be talking about academic advising. So tonight we have with us Dean Jason Bryan. He is the Dean of the first year class, the Director of the PACE program, and he's going to be walking you through academic requirements, general education requirements, and all of those questions that you all have about AP and IB credits and those types of things. So Jason, take it away.
Thanks, Tanya. We've got a lot to cover tonight, so let's get to it. Again, I'm Jason Bryan, Dean of the first year class, and I'm just one of the people who is here to support and guide you along your way, and I just want to take a moment to welcome you. Glad that you're here this evening or this morning, wherever you are located. And really, we want to let you know that the advising that you're going to be receiving is going to be very personalized, very customized, and you're going to have a lot of chances to get your questions answered specifically when you arrive. So I'm going to cover some general questions. A lot of the answers to my questions are going to often be, it depends, because a lot of the things that you're going to want to know is going to be based on information that's really based on your needs and your interests and your background. So let's get started right now and we'll get to the presentation. Again, you can type in questions. We have several people who will be answering them and I'll be answering them too.
All right.
Okay, thanks, Tanya.
Sure. I'm going to give you...
Okay, so academic advising is topic of this evening. Orientation, and you've all heard about orientation. Tonight I'm actually going to focus mostly on academic orientation, so the academic components of your arrival. And orientation isn't just something that happens for a weekend. Orientation is really all about your transition from now through next semester. So many of you have been logging on to Blackboard, and Blackboard is one of the primary means for you to start taking advantage of learning about academics at Emory. So if you have not been starting the Blackboard modules, we strongly encourage you to do so, and we hope that you've already gotten started on that. Academic resources, and this is probably, of everything this evening, this is probably one of the most important slides that you're going to be wanting to take a look at. Basically, here you are in the middle. Advising at Emory is actually very special because there's not just one person here to help you. You have an entire network of people. You have an orientation leader, and that's a peer leader that's going to be working with you when you arrive and working with you all year. This is an Emory student who is well versed in requirements, also knows the ins and outs of scheduling, and is a great resource for all of your questions relating to orientation, relating to transitioning, and relating to your scheduling. You also have, if you can see in the purple, a faculty advisor. You'll all be assigned a faculty advisor, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward in just a minute. Outside of that, in the circle outside of those two, are a vast array of resources. There are deans in the Office for Undergraduate Education, and I'm one of the deans. We have a pre-health mentoring office and pre-health advisors. We have several academic support resources and also resources in campus life. There are lots of different resources, and really part of orientation is to learn about what your resources are and how to use them. And academic departments, again, are another very big component of the advising process. And again, academic planning is really what's happening in your relationships. And many of you have asked questions about registering for classes. How do I start selecting classes? How do I plan my schedule? What do I do to make sense of all the things I need to do in the first semester and all the things I need to do in my second semester? And really, the planning is something that's going to be taking place now. It's going to be taking place over the summer. But really, the heart of the planning, the real place where you're going to be thinking through what it is that you want to do and how you're going to meet your goals, that really happens in your relationships. It happens with people. And that's why your actual class selection, when you actually enroll in classes, that's why that's happening during orientation. It's not happening now, it's happening when you have the benefit of having people around you who can really make sure that your questions are being answered and that you have the most personalized experience possible. We'll talk more about some of those specifics. So your orientation leaders are assisting you when you arrive. They're going to help you be familiar with resources, and they're going to serve as a primary liaison for you and your families. Your faculty advisor is someone who we're assigning to you in the next few weeks, and this is someone who is here to really guide you. We assign you to a faculty advisor in hopes that you'll have somebody who you can connect with. Your faculty advisor is not going to know the answer to every question that you have. In fact, that's why I really emphasize that whole network of advising support, because there's no one expert on everything at Emory. There are lots of people with different areas of expertise. Your faculty advisor is somebody who is really there to help you with the big picture. They're there to help talk through what are your goals, what are your interests, what things have you done in high school that you really enjoyed, what are things that you are excited about exploring. And your faculty advisor is really going to be that mentor, that resource. So they're not necessarily going to be somebody who is connected to an area that you are necessarily going to be majoring in. In fact, we don't want you right now to know exactly what you're majoring in. We want you to potentially think through some ideas, but this is a time for you to start talking and exploring. It's not the time for you to be having everything over your next 4 years decided. So we want you to be preparing to have really good, strong conversations. And tonight we're going to go through some of the things that are going to help you have those conversations, that are going to help you come in and do some planning. We want you to learn about some of the academic policies at Emory. We want you to learn about the general education requirements. And we want you to start practicing and planning, thinking about your schedules. But we want you to be flexible. And that means that you may see courses that you're interested in, you may see things offered at different times, but there is a flexibility that you're going to want to have. That most people who start planning their schedules are going to have several drafts. They're going to have drafts over the next few weeks, but then they're going to be changing and fine tuning that as they have conversations with the people that we've mentioned. We've had a lot of questions, but several questions so far about AP and IB exam scores. We want to let you know that if you haven't sent those in, send them in today. Send them in very soon. Now, we have to receive those by the end of the first semester in order for you to potentially receive credit for those. And even if you're not sure which ones you want us to be counting and which ones you want us to be helping you put on your transcript, just send them in. You don't have to know exactly right now. It's important just for the time being to make sure that you have them sent so that we can receive them and evaluate them. The admissions office, they're the branch of the university that actually receives them and evaluates them. And so admissions is there to make sure that that gets put on your transcript. We're going to also talk a little bit more about exploring the course atlas, the catalog, majors and minors, and some of the pre-professional areas. Schedule building tips. Again, as you start planning your schedules, the first thing I really want to emphasize is to explore. I know many of you have things that you know you need to take and things that you want to take, but we want you to be open. We want you to think not just about what requirements are, but we want you to think about things that maybe are new to you in areas that you've never heard of before or thought about. So that's something that I encourage you to do, looking at the catalog while you are thinking about your schedules. And again, those are things that you can be talking to your advisors and orientation leaders about when you arrive. Building a balanced schedule is also something that we have lots of questions about. What is a balanced schedule? How do I think about a balanced schedule? We want you to be balancing basically requirements that we have, but also making sure that your needs are met. And a balanced schedule really varies from person to person. So there's no such thing as the perfect schedule or the perfectly balanced schedule. And it may depend on the semester. It may depend on what's being offered when. It may depend on what you can get into at a certain time. But it's more of an art than a science, as opposed to having something that's exact. You want to be flexible, but you also want to think about how different areas of your academics connect to each other, and that making sure that you're not taking maybe too many courses in one area and that you don't get overwhelmed. It's important that you weigh your goals for the semester alongside realistic expectations and outcomes. While you're learning, upperclassmen advisors are here to help you think through what is realistic, what is essential. You may have very, very, very good and positive goals, but you also really want to make sure you don't overwhelm yourself so that you really have time to focus on the things that you want to focus on. And that doesn't just include your classes, because the classroom is a very important place for you to be focusing your learning, but there's a lot of learning that comes outside of the classroom. We want you to be able to participate in different events, different groups, different clubs, different co-curricular experiences. So we want you to have time, not just to be doing your coursework, but to be connecting with people. And the relationships that I talked about in the very first slide, we want you to be having time to go and have conversations with people who you want to talk to. So the goal isn't to just overwhelm yourself and cram in as much as you can take, but it's really to feel like not just your schedule academically is balanced, but your schedule in terms of your schedule within your life and at Emory is balanced and connected and comfortable. We want you to have a really good time here. We want you to have fun. We want you to be engaged intellectually, academically, and socially. And so that balance, I can't really emphasize enough, is really essential, is really crucial. I know you all have some more nitty-gritty kinds of questions, and we're going to start going through some of the more specifics now. As far as courses at Emory, a typical academic course is between 3 and 5 academic credit hours. And that depends on many different things, depending on whether the course has a lab, whether the course is writing intensive. So 3 to 5 credit hours, you'll want to take a look not just at what the class is, but you'll look at the designation. Courses are designated by areas that they fulfill in terms of the GERs, the general education requirements. I'll go through that in a second, but they also are credit hour based. So you'll want to look to see how many credit hours is a particular class. And generally in your first semester, you're going to want to take 15 or 16 credit hours. The maximum number of credit hours you can take in your first semester is 19 credit hours. In your first semester, you're going to want to make sure that you include Health 100 and PACE 101. Now, PACE 101 is Pre-Major Advising Connections at Emory, and that's basically related to the things that we're doing now over this summer. PACE 101 is a course that helps you with transition kinds of issues, questions, how do I use my resources, how do I engage in opportunities. The rationale for the course really has come from years of, I've had several times where upperclassmen, seniors would come in senior year and say, I wish I knew about research opportunities in my first year. I wish I knew about what requirements were and why I needed to take certain things. I wish I knew where offices were and what people did in different types of areas around campus. So this is really your nuts and bolts. How do I start to engage effectively at Emory? So that's a course that's a 1 credit hour course. It's an academic course, but it is not a general education requirement, meaning you need to sign up for this course in your first semester, but it is not part of what I'm going to talk about as the GERs. Health 100, personal health, is a general education requirement. You must sign up for this in your first semester alongside PACE 101. That's really important that you make room in your schedules to take these 1 credit hour courses. Health 100 is graded. It's a course that you take for a letter grade. PACE 101 is taken basically what I would call pass-fail, satisfactory, unsatisfactory. In order to pass the course, we'll be detailing all of that information in the course syllabus. So basically, whenever you are in a class, you'll get a syllabus. It'll detail the requirements of the course. It'll detail what needs to be done in order to meet the requirements. And so those are things when you're actually taking classes that you'll want to be very in tune with. What's required of a class. So that's why planning is more than just thinking about what classes to take, but we have a time in the beginning of the semester where you're actually going to have a chance to go to the class. Is this a good fit for me? Is this not a good fit for me? And look at what those requirements actually are. Also, for those of you interested in pre-health, pre-health is not a major. Some of you think that's a major. It's not a major, it's an area. Many people who are interested in pre-health actually major in things like history, major in music, major in things in the social sciences. They may major in biology, they may major in chemistry. It's not actually required or essential. And so that also ties into balance. So you don't necessarily have to think that everything that you want to accomplish and everything that you need to do has to be done in your first semester. There's room in that semester to be thinking about balance, not just thinking about outcomes. And we don't want you to just be checking off boxes. We want you to be thinking about what your interests are, what you want to do, and how you want to accomplish your goals. You may find that your roommate who wants to go to medical school is taking a certain sequence of classes. You may find that you're taking a different sequence of classes. Again, there are some things that may be recommended, but not everyone has the same path to get to the same place. So that's something that we really want you to keep in mind. So I want to take a look at some sample schedules. So take a look at this for just a second. So let's take a look at the sample schedule. Let's pretend that this is a student at Emory in their first semester. And they are deciding about, what should they take, how should they start thinking about classes and selection. You'll notice the first two classes, again, that we've mentioned are PACE 101 and Health 100. You'll also notice this is just an example of someone who has some varied interests. They have, if we look at the last class there, Complet 190. These 190 classes are what are known as your first year seminars. And so you have to take a first year seminar either in your first semester or your second semester, not both. You may find that these are actually very small classes. They're discussion based. They have an opportunity for you to really engage very closely with a faculty member and a small group of students. First year seminars are 18 or fewer students, so they're really great ways to start feeling connected academically. But again, there are things that if you don't take it in your first semester, you don't find one that you really are passionate about taking, you can do it in your second semester. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in an area that's related to a possible major or a possible pre-professional interest. It can just be something that you're excited about that looks interesting. And again, I'm going to echo that again and again and again. Look at things that look interesting to you. Don't just look at things that fill in requirements. You'll notice that most of these classes are 100 level, but there may be times when a 200 or 300 level class could be appropriate. And it's not necessarily going to be something that you want to take in your first semester, but it may be, and that's why if you look at things that are interesting, that are beyond the 100 level, that's where you'll want to talk to your advisor and you'll want to talk to the instructor of the class to see, gee, would this be appropriate for me to take in my first semester? In most cases, you're going to want to stick to 100 level courses, but again, that doesn't apply to everybody and it doesn't apply to every class. We're going to shift over to the schedule in the light purple, and this is a schedule that again includes PACE 101 and Health 100, which is mandatory that you do in your first semester. But you're also going to see this may be a schedule that could be good for somebody, but it could also be a schedule that could merit at least some careful consideration. For some of you, you're going to want to take chemistry and biology 141 if you're pre-health, and you're going to want to do it in your first semester. For some people, that can be a little bit overwhelming, and it depends on what your background is, it depends on what your strengths are, and it depends on what you feel is a good balance. So those are things that, again, for schedule number 2, you'll want to pay very close attention to what really matters to you. And be talking through some of these questions with your faculty advisor, with your orientation leader. So you'll notice someone has a 385 class. Well, some special topics classes may be a good fit for someone who is just getting here. In a lot of cases, though, it's not going to be. So this really speaks to the importance of having the conversations and not just randomly signing up for things. You'll also notice at the bottom of both of these sample schedules, the total number of credit hours. And again, that's going to vary. So for some of you, it may be 15, it may be 16. In other cases, there may be 17 or 18. I know there are some of you who are interested in some of the music performance classes that are 1 credit hour based and may have more than one of those. And so some of you may have 18, 19 credit hours. So don't be so concerned with, I have to have 19 hours or I need to have 15. But this is a range. And again, depending on what you're taking and the combination of courses, you may find that 5 3-credit hour courses is going to be a good fit for you. You may find that 4 4-hour courses is a good fit depending on what you're doing. We have a lot to keep covering, but I want to make sure that you have time for questions. So I want to kind of speed this up a little bit. The general education requirements, these are things that you really can be learning and researching on Blackboard and on your own. And rather than go through every nuance here, I just want to point you in the right direction so that you can start learning about this stuff on your own. I mentioned the first year seminar course, and I mentioned some of the writing, but talking a little bit more about the first year writing. First year writing requirement is something that you may or may not actually be enrolling in your first year. It's something that you have to have completed in terms of the requirement within the first 2 semesters here. So, and that's different from the first year seminar that has to be done here at Emory. The first year writing requirement would be Lit 110, it would be English 181, or it would be English 101. And that's a course that is specifically for first year students. And some of you may be taking AP courses or may have taken an AP that satisfies that area. So if you've taken something, and we'll talk about AP and IBs in just a few minutes, but if you've taken something that fulfills that area, you don't necessarily have to enroll in that area. But you need to make sure that you've completed the equivalency or that requirement in your first year. And that could be first or second semester. Then there's something that we call the continuing writing requirement. And again, I mentioned to you how courses have designations in addition to designating how many credit hours they're worth. And that's where you can see right here this FSEM in parentheses, the FWRT in parentheses, and this WRT in parentheses. These courses, when you sign up on Opus, when you start looking at them, they're the courses that you enroll in, the courses that you're seeing, if they are counting in a particular area to fulfill a general education requirement, that tag, as we call it, is going to be showing up. It's going to be showing up right next to the course. And so if you see a course and it may look like, gee, there's a lot of writing in this course, so I'm assuming that it's WRT, a writing requirement. Well, it's not if it does not show up that way on Opus, listed that way. So you need to make sure that when you're looking at classes, you pay very, very close attention to these designations. And the writing intensive courses are really to help you. They're not just about how much writing is taking place in the course, but they're really designed to help you look at writing as a process. So there's a lot of feedback, there's a lot of practice, there's a lot of different kinds of things that you would be learning in those courses. The MQR, math and quantitative reasoning, that's another area that you have to fulfill. You don't have to, the rest of these here, you don't have to do in your first year. So that's something to really be aware of. The only things that have to be completed in the first year are the courses that I've just mentioned, the freshman, the first year writing requirement, and the first year seminar. The math and quantitative reasoning, the science, nature, and technology, the history, society, and cultures courses, these can be done at any time. Again, thinking through how you want to balance your schedule, you don't necessarily have to think about getting everything done and getting everything accomplished before you can start exploring in other areas. But you want to think about starting to make progress in completing these areas. And for the MQR courses, again, we have lists, we have courses that you'll see what courses fulfill these different areas. Your science, nature, and technology courses are courses that you'll be taking as well. One of them has to have a lab requirement included, and that would be the SNT with the L designated next to it. The History, Society, Cultures, you'll be learning about those. Again, these are things we're going to be covering through these Blackboard modules as well, so I'm not going to take a lot of time to go through it right now. The Humanities, Arts, and Performance, HAP, that's an area that that's also important. So that's in area 7. And this may be a little confusing, so I want to take a minute to make sure that you understand what this means. There are courses that are HAP, Humanities, Arts, and Performances. I'm going to jump ahead for just a second here, but and then I'm going to jump back. We're going to show you that the HAP courses here are Humanities, Arts, Performances. There are also courses that you'll notice that are HAL, which are your courses that are taught in a foreign language. And you need to have 2 courses that are taught in a foreign language. They have to be in the same language in sequential levels. So if you are taking French 101, for instance, and you want to complete the requirement, you then need to go ahead and take the next level, French 102. Likewise, if you are placed into French 102, you'll want to take French 201, the next level. Now, sequential levels, that does not necessarily mean that you have to take the next level in the next semester, although in a lot of cases it's recommended so you don't lose the continuity of the learning within that language. But the language courses that you take need to be sequential in terms of the level. You need to make sure that when you are thinking about your language, your foreign language requirement, that you are taking whatever placement test that's required by that department. And each department has a slightly different route or method for assessing your proficiency and what level you should be placed into. Now, some of you may find that you want to take more than 2 foreign language classes, and that's absolutely something that we encourage if it's something that you want to do. Now, in order to fulfill the requirement, though, you need to make sure that if you are doing 4 HAL courses to fulfill this area, that at least one of them is at the 200 level or above. So say you're doing French 101, French 102, French 201, and French 202, then that's a way that you can complete this area. But if you did French 101 and 102, and then you did Spanish 101 and 102, that wouldn't complete the area completely. You would need to have an HAP course that's not a foreign language, or an upper level foreign language course at the 200 level or above. So here's where we're going to start skipping through personal health. I've covered that. You have to take it for letter grade in your first semester. You also need to take your physical education and dance courses. So there are 2 one-hour courses. One is a PPF, a Principles of Physical Fitness course, and one is a PE elective, and those can be taken on an SU basis. AP and IB. Just to repeat what I just said, send the scores in. You don't know which ones you want to use. You don't even necessarily want them to all show up on your transcript. That's okay. You can have that removed later. You can't have it added after the end of the first semester. So whatever you're thinking about, whatever you're considering, make sure that you send them in. Um, Send them into the Office of Admission by the last day of fall 2013. Now, there is a limit to the number of uh, credits that you can receive from outside of Emory, and that would include AP and IB or courses taken that you're bringing in potentially from another institution. Um, there is a limit of 24 maximum credit hours. And you may have taken many, many AP classes, but you're limited to 24. But again, you don't have to decide which ones you're going to use to count. Just make sure they're all in, and we can help you make those decisions down the road. The AP and IB course equivalencies and details about the policies will be on the PACE orientation Blackboard site. So most of your questions are going to be able to be answered right there. You can see which exams count in which particular areas. And your transcripts, what happens is once we receive those, it takes a little while to process. So don't be alarmed if things aren't showing up right now that you've sent in. And when you arrive, if things still aren't showing up, you can go to the admissions office and make sure that they've received those or that they're putting them in the areas of the GERs to fulfill the areas that you are intending them to be placed into. So your transcript, the top of your transcript, will show once they've been processed where they're actually fitting into and how many credit hours you are receiving per exam. And that's spelled out pretty clearly. Okay, so registration for courses. Again, this is something I want to have you feel really, really comfortable about. I want you to relax. I want you not to worry at this point. We'll be going through Opus down the road. We'll be going through online registration, all of that. We'll be going through what we call your shopping cart on Opus. Again, Opus is our online registration program, and you'll be gaining a lot of familiarity with that. You'll be gaining familiarity with your shopping cart, and shopping cart is basically what you'll learn about this, but it's your placeholder. It's a place to put things that you're interested in. It's not just because you put something in your cart doesn't mean that you're going to keep it there. It doesn't mean you're going to be that there's going to be room in that class when you're doing enrollment. It just means that it's a place for you to keep track of the things that you're interested in. And that's a very important tool that you're going to be gaining a lot of familiarity with. Enrollment itself is later in August. I'm going to take you through that schedule in just a minute. We've talked about the people who are there to help you, people, offices, a whole network, and that refers back to the things we've covered. This academic planning schedule is designed to kind of help you visualize what this orientation from an academic standpoint is going to look like for you. So from the moment you arrive, really during that entire first week, you have a lot of time to ask questions, to have conversations, and to think about your goals. And again, those conversations should not just be about what class should I take to meet my requirements, what class fits in at 8:30, how do I get my GERs done? Those are questions that are important, and they're things that should inform your decision making. But I want you to be asking questions that are a little bit broader than that too. What would be a good way to balance my schedule? What does exploration mean? What does Emory mean in terms of the liberal arts? And you'll hear a lot more about what a liberal arts education is and why that's so important for you to consider, even if you have very specific goals and interests. We want you to be experienced learning in various disciplines and various areas. And the GERs are really intended so that you can gain experience in a wide range of areas that Emory has to offer, and be well versed in how different disciplines think about topics and ask questions about topics. And that's, again, something for you to be thinking about. Going through the schedule Saturday when you arrive, you'll be meeting your OLs, your orientation leaders. You'll also have a chance to meet with members of many of the academic departments at the Emory Expo on Saturday. So faculty members are going to be around. It's not a time for all of your advising to take place. It's a time to start being able to ask some questions that you have. Your orientation packets will contain a letter, confirming your faculty advisor, and where you should meet them on Monday. You'll be assigned to your faculty advisor. We're going to be covering that later in the Blackboard modules, but you will be getting assigned to your faculty advisor. It's based on a lot of factors. It's not, again, somebody who you're necessarily going to be working with for 4 years, although it may be. It may be somebody in an area that you're not necessarily thinking about taking classes in. We want you to remember that this person is here to form a connection with you, not necessarily to be the expert who advises you on everything. So that's Saturday academically. There'll be other things, again, other things that happen during orientation. I'm just highlighting the academic pieces for now. Sunday, you're going to be having more detailed academic planning sessions with your OLs. Also, Dean Foreman and Dean Brzezinski are going to be welcoming you and giving you a discussion talking about Emory and your education and the general education requirements. Monday morning is when you'll be meeting with your faculty advisor. There'll also be OLs there to answer questions, and so you'll be actually going to the offices of your faculty advisor that morning and having a meeting with them. So you'll start those conversations then. Monday afternoon is when there'll be a departmental fair, and representatives from all of our departments and pre-professional areas are going to be on hand to answer questions. So your conversations with your faculty advisors may be more broad and general, and they may say, you know what, you really need to talk to somebody in a specific department outside of the area that your faculty advisor is in, so that this person can answer more specific questions for you. Tuesday morning, the OLs are going to be stationed in your residence halls during the enrollment appointments. What happens is you'll have essentially two what we call direct enrollment appointments, so to speak. So you'll be randomly assigned to a window of time during that morning where you will be going on to Opus and moving from the shopping cart basically to I'm enrolled in classes. And you'll be able to enroll in, the reason we have you we're breaking it up into two different enrollment appointment slots is so, say you have the very first randomly assigned appointment slot for that day. Well, we want to make sure that the people who have maybe a later appointment slot, later than you, also have opportunities to select courses that are potentially very popular. And so you're not going to be fulfilling all of your enrollment in that very, very first window. You have two windows so that we can have a more fair and balanced direct enrollment process. And that, again, is on Tuesday.
All right. Switch back.
I'm going to switch back to Tanya. We want to have a chance for you to
Great. There we go.
to ask some more questions. We've seen a lot of questions flying on the chat room here, and questions about talking to an advisor before you're signing up for classes. Absolutely, you're going to have plenty of time to be talking to your advisor. In fact, those conversations are before the window of enrolling. And now, as far as the summer goes, you're not going to be having your discussions really intensively before you arrive. So you may be planning, but in terms of speaking to advisors, yeah, that's when you actually arrive. One of the things I also wanted to mention that happens during orientation are also different sessions in pre-health, sessions in pre-business. So you'll have representatives from different areas and programs, pre-nursing, that you can go to and have informational sessions that we will be highly, highly encouraging you to be attending. So again, don't worry now. Not every question is going to be answered before you set foot on campus.
All right. I'm going to go through some of the questions that have been popping up while you were doing your presentation. And we're going a little bit long, so if we can get through as many of these as possible, that would be great. There have been lots of questions about AP and IB credit, and one of the big ones is what scores are accepted. If you don't have a 5 and you maybe got a 3 or a 4, are those scores accepted, and how does that work?
Okay, you need to have at least a 4. So a 3 will not fulfill an area for the purposes of getting these courses on your transcript and having them count as a prerequisite. 4 or a 5. Now, it's a little bit more complicated than that, because say you got a 3 and you really feel like you're strong in a particular area. You're not going to get credit. We're not going to give you credit on your transcript. It will not show up. But if there's a course that you are maybe thinking about taking that maybe requires a prerequisite in one of those areas, those are things that you'll want to have discussions with in terms of your advisor or the department in question. But it's a good question. Again, all of this, you will be able to look on the Blackboard site for all of this information.
Great. Can you receive AP credit for a class but deny it or reject it and take the class anyway?
Yes, great question.
Okay.
You can, but send it in.
Send it in.
Because you want to keep your options open. You may think you want to have something not appear on your transcript, but you may change your mind later. You can change your mind about what to remove. You can't change your mind about what to add.
Great. That is great advice. Can you use AP credits to count towards the GERs?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
And again, what happens is the GERs that you're looking at can be fulfilled using certain AP and IBs. You'll want to look at, we have a chart that shows you what areas they count toward. And your transcripts will actually show from the Office of Admission where those areas fit into. Now again, if you've taken more than the number of courses that are allowing you to put credits on,
right,
you can change that up and say you're giving credit for an area that's showing up, and you say, no, I'm going to take that course anyway, but I have another AP score that admissions has, but they haven't put on my transcripts. I want that to be on my transcripts because I don't want to take the GER in that area. That's where you can ask admissions to move it around.
Great. Let's see. Again, these AP questions have been very popular tonight.
Lots of you have taken AP.
And Jason, I apologize if you may not know the answer to this question. So if you don't know, it's okay.
I don't know. That's the other reason why that chart is so important, because again, not everyone knows the answer to every question.
Right.
I've been here for several years. Things keep coming up that I have to scratch my head and say, I wonder what the answer is. And always, if you don't know the answer to the question, or the person that you're asking doesn't know the answer to the question, they're going to refer you to somebody who does. So you don't always need an immediate answer, but you need to know where to look for it.
Okay, here's the question.
Yes.
How long does it take to process the AP/IB credit? There have been a lot of questions that have come up on the chat box, and we've been getting questions on the orientation email address and on the hotline about students saying, my school submitted it, I sent these in a long time ago, when do they show up, what do I do if
they
not
haven't
there?
shown up?
Yeah.
Well, for a lot of you, the answer is going to be it depends. Some of you have sent these things in But keep in mind, there are over 1,300 of you who have scores.
Correct.
And again, they're not just AP scores. They're IB scores. They are classes that you've potentially taken this summer somewhere else. So there are lots of different things that people are sending in, and admissions is right now bombarded with these things.
Right.
And just be patient. They're going to show up. They're going to take a little while.
Mhm.
You can check on Opus. You can check on your transcript. That will show you if they have been processed.
Right.
But just because something hasn't been processed doesn't mean it hasn't been received. So you want to give it some time.
Great.
But you can kind of keep in mind looking at those charts that I keep talking about on Blackboard and Opus. For planning purposes, you can be thinking in your back of your mind, aha, this counts in this area, it's worth this many credits, and even though it's not showing up on my transcript, I have a pretty good sense that it's going to be.
Great. Similarly, when did they find out results of placement tests?
Placement tests.
And specifically the language placement test.
Again, it depends. It depends on the language. It depends on the requirement. It depends on the area. Orientation is when you're going to have a lot of these answers. And another thing to keep in mind, the test itself is not the end-all be-all. You need to take the test. You absolutely need to take the test if you're interested in a certain area. But there's room to say, wait a minute, I was placed into this area. I was placed into this level. But I really think I'm in over my head. I really don't think I'm ready. So go talk to someone at the departmental fair.
Mm-hmm.
Go talk to someone in that department and say, I'm worried about this. I'm concerned about this. So you'll have placements, but you'll have essentially time to talk through the placement if you don't think that you are ready.
Great. Yes or no? Is PACE 101 mandatory?
Yes.
Okay.
Next question.
Done. There have been a lot of questions from students wanting to know about classes in the business school.
Yes.
So let me kind of fire off a couple at a
The
time.
big ones. Okay.
First question is, can they take classes in the business school during their first year?
Mhm.
That's question number one. If they think that they are pre-BBA, do they also get a business school advisor?
Mhm.
Number three is, how do they fit in B school prerequisites with the other classes that they're taking during their first couple years before they apply to the business
Great
school?
questions. Okay. So yes, there's a difference between classes at the business school and classes that are business school prerequisites to apply to the business school. So some of those prerequisites are located here in Emory College. And I want to stress that Emory College and the Griswold Business School, those are two different schools. They're in Emory University, but
Right.
those are two different schools and they're two different programs. And so if you end up going to the business school and going there, you would get a BBA, a Bachelor's in Business Administration. That is a different degree from a BA or a BS. So just keep that in mind. Now, courses that are prerequisites, you'll see again on Blackboard, your courses that are prerequisites, your calculus, and some of the prerequisites are actually fulfilled by your AP scores. So you may not necessarily be taking all of your prerequisites here on campus in order to apply to the business school. There are some of the prerequisites in the business school that are actually taken at the business school, and offhand I can think of financial accounting, and I can think of data and decision analytics. So those are courses that, yes, you can take in your first year. Now, they're not always recommended. That you may want to get some other courses under your belt as prerequisites before you take them. I'm thinking financial accounting too is a pretty intense course, especially for a student in their first semester to take. Doesn't mean you're not allowed to take it. It means, again, getting back to balance, getting back to what you want to do. We find that you can fit these things in. You can fit prerequisites in when you are planning your schedules. But you don't have to get everything done in the very beginning. You have some time to spread them out. The last question I think we had was Do I have an advisor
Mhm.
in the BBA program
Yes.
during my first year? The answer to that is you have an advisor in Emory College who is your primary advisor of record. Um, and you can also talk to people in the BBA program.
Mhm.
You have you have time again during orientation to go to these information sessions about the business school and ask questions.
Mhm.
Um, and again, that's why in that first slide, your pre-major advising connections, we don't just call it faculty advising, we call it pre-major advising connections.
Right.
It's because everyone in that circle is there to help you, not just the one person who you're assigned to that's mentoring you as a faculty advisor. A great question.
Yes.
What else have we
Um,
got?
let's see. Can classes count as two different things? As in, can they count towards your major and also count as a GER?
Um, again, it depends on what they are. If something has a GER tag
Mm-hmm.
and it's something that the department allows for a departmental requirement in your major, then yes, then they can. If something is a writing intensive class and fulfills that continuing writing requirement, there may be essentially two what we call tags again, where it's counting in one area of the GERs and also in the continuing writing area.
Okay.
So a CWR that's an HSC area, for instance, with writing would be an HSCW, and that would fulfill a writing and an HSC.
Okay. Um, yes or no? Do I have to complete all of the GERs in my first year?
The answer is no. We want you to start making some progress, but you do not need to fulfill all of your requirements, GERs, in your first year. Now again, the ones I mentioned that you have to take in your first year
Mm-hmm.
are Health 100, your first year writing requirement, and your first year seminar. Those have to be done in your first year.
And PACE.
PACE you have to do in your first year. PACE is not actually a GER.
Right.
It's something that you have to enroll in, but it is not a general education requirement per se.
Okay. I think we have hit most of the questions. The
Big
one
question.
thing that I was wanting to have you maybe address briefly
Yes.
is that I feel like every year I have the impression from first year students that they're so focused on that first year and particularly that first semester that they're not maybe thinking about their Emory experience as a 4 year experience.
Yes.
And what can you say to these wonderful students who have joined us tonight to kind of reassure them that they are going to graduate? That just because they don't get that class in their first semester doesn't mean that all is lost. That we need to be thinking about their Emory experience as a 4 year experience and not just a 1 year experience.
Okay. Great question. Two things I want to say about that. One, and this is really important for you to remember because I know you're thinking a lot about the first year and getting the classes that you want and having everything work out the right way as it relates to 4 years. Couple of things to keep in mind. During that enrollment block, during that time when you're actually enrolling in classes through what we call direct enrollment, um, that's just your first round. That is just a first initial attempt at getting things that you want. We have what we call the drop add period, where there's a lot of room to explore, to sit in on a class, to go to a class, to talk to a faculty member, to talk to your advisor again, to talk to your OL again. And there's so much switching around and changing things around that just because you don't get things that you want on the first go around doesn't mean you won't get them during that week when you're actually in the drop add period. People who get into classes that they think they want show up the first day and say, you know what, I'm in over my head. This is not the right fit for me. And classes open up. So that flexibility and not panicking when you're first enrolling is a really important thing. And that I can't emphasize that enough. Now moving into the 4 years, a lot of the reason why people start panicking about not getting into the classes that they want is because they're so worried about the 4 years. if I don't get into this class right away, it's going to mess up
Mhm.
my entire Emory experience.
Right.
What am I going to do, if I didn't get into calculus right away, or I didn't get into the section of calculus that I wanted to? You need to relax a little bit. Some sequences may be sequences that are sequences that you think you want to go in, but they don't necessarily have to be done sequentially. Classes that you think you want to take in your first semester or your first year can be taken in your second year,
Mhm.
can be taken in your third year. Now, there are some things that are important to be doing uh, in your first year that may be important to get into. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking about, um, you want to be a chemistry major or you're pre-health and you really want to take chemistry and get that situated in your first semester. There are certain things that you want to make sure that you've talked to your advisor about or you've talked to departments about because they are important for you to take from the get-go. And there are a lot of departments that realize that and are going to work with you even if you're not fitting in to a class the minute that your enrollment is done. And they're going to work with you on helping you to get in. Some departments are not going to be able to be accommodating you in your first year because it's not critical. It's not critical that you're in that class. And that's why, as Tanya mentioned, thinking about this as a 4-year plan or even a 5-year plan is really important because things that you think you need to accomplish in your first year, some things you do need to accomplish in your first year, but some things you don't. And that's where the advising comes in. That's where the conversations come in. That's where going to the departmental fair and saying, gee, I didn't get into this class, or I'm worried that I'm not going to get into this class because I have time conflicts, or I'm not going to be able to do all of these things at once. How important is it for me to take this in my very first semester? And that's where you'll get reassurance that it will work out. And I've been here for a really long time, and I've never seen a student who things don't end up working out for. It may take a little work, it may take a little extra planning, it may take talking to your advisor, talking to departments. We also, just to emphasize, have a team of academic advisors in my office. I have open hours, I have office hours, I have a team of other advisors who are there, and we can help you through the ins and outs of that. So again, 4-year plan, think about it as not just your first semester, not just your second semester, but think about your goals overall.
Great. I think with that, we are going to end things for this evening. So I would like to thank you for joining us. Jason, thank you for joining us
Thank
tonight.
you.
Students, thank you for joining us tonight. If you still have questions, there are lots of ways to reach out to us. I'm going to put a contact slide up here at the end, but you may email us at ec.orientation@emory.edu. You can call us on the hotline at 404-727-9000. You can follow us on Twitter. But the thing that might be the most helpful for a lot of the questions you have right now is to actually log into Blackboard and go explore the
Yes.
PACE course. Almost everything that you have asked can be found in there. Your friend Thomas Carswell has clearly gone through the PACE course and has Googled lots of information. So if he can do it, I think you all can too. So please go through the materials on the PACE course. It is really going to help you be prepared when you come here in the fall. I cannot stress that enough.
Yes, and a big shout out to Thomas for all of his hard work in answering these questions. You've done a great job, and yes, your peers are very thankful as well. And I'll look forward to meeting all of you in the fall in PACE 101. I'm actually also the instructor for that class, so I'll be seeing you the very first day. I'm around. I'll have open hours, so look forward to meeting you.
Great. We will also be posting this webinar later on Blackboard and YouTube. I know we've been saying that about previous webinars. We've had some technical difficulties, but I promise we have not forgotten you, and we will let you know as soon as those are available so that you can go back and watch it again and again and again and again. And the final thing I want to say is that the registration for next week's webinar is already live. Next week we'll be tackling financial issues It would be a really great one for students to watch with their parents and family members. So we'd love to have you join us for that. We'll have representatives here from Student Financial Services and Financial Aid. So registration for that is already open. New PACE content will be released tomorrow as well. So there's lots of things that you guys can be doing right now to help get yourselves ready to join us here in the fall. And like Jason said, we really
The preceding program is copyrighted by Emory University.